Good morning, and welcome to a new year of Terry Third Thursday programs. I'm Diane Bloodworth. I'm on the Terry College Alumni Board, and also I co-chair the Terry Third Thursday programs with my cohorts Cecil and Alan here. Welcome to everyone. If this is your first time here, you are in the Terry College's Executive Education Center, and this is the Atlanta home for Terry College programs and also a meeting place for our Terry alumni. If you've been here before, you're probably used to seeing the Dean Robert Sumacrast, do what I'm doing this morning in terms of the introductions. But January is the month that the Terry College Economic Outlook Business Luncheons go on the road. And the Dean is in Albany this morning, and he's getting ready to speak for the Southwest Georgia Economic Outlook. He'll be back here with us next month after his road show. Terry Third Thursday is sponsored by the Bank of North Georgia, and I believe we have some folks here this morning from the Bank of North Georgia. Thank you for your sponsorship. We also have two media sponsors, Public Broadcasting Atlanta. I think I saw Harriet. There we go. And Atlanta Business Chronicle. Atlanta Business Chronicle. Thank you. Let me tell you about a few upcoming speakers. Bank of North Georgia is not only a sponsor, but on February 18th, Kessel Stelling will be here. And Kessel is the president and CEO of Bank of North Georgia and the regional CEO for Synovus. And the Alumni Board is very excited that Kessel's agreed to speak for us next month. So be here on February 18th. A little change of pace in March. Joel Babbitt of Mother Nature Network will be here. In April, we have Georgia basketball coach Mark Fox. In May, President Michael Adams. And in June, James Shepard, who is on our alumni board and is chairman of the renowned Shepard Center. So some great speakers for you, so make sure you put those on your calendar. One other date for your calendar is April 24th, and that is the Alumni Awards and Gala. That will be here in Buckhead, right down the street at the Intercontinental Hotel. So let's move on with our program this morning, because after that video introduction, I want to hear more from Mr. Leo Wells. Leo has been a leader in the real estate investment sector for a quarter century. He pioneered an investment philosophy for office real estate that focused on low debt, high-quality tenants, and long-term leases that has attracted $12 billion in assets since Wells Real Estate Funds was founded in 1984. He's a 30-year veteran of the real estate brokerage, sales, and management industries, and he's developed a national reputation as an expert on real estate investment trusts. As you've seen, he's been a guest on CNBC, CBS Market Watch, Fox Business News, and Bloomberg Television. He's been quoted and featured in many financial publications. Among his honors and recognitions, he was the national winner of the 2003 Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award in Financial Services category. And very important to us, in 2006, he was honored with the Distinguished Alumni Award from the Terry College of Business.
That was for that week, wasn't it?
Just that day, I think. So, the Terry College is very proud to call you a graduate, Leo, and we're pleased to have you talk to us this morning about why you love this recession. I think this should be interesting. Welcome, Leo.
Well, here are my notes. Let's see what it says. Oh, I'm supposed to thank the Terry Business School for being here. Bob has laid all this out for me. Thank y'all for letting me come. Actually, y'all is singular for those of you who weren't born in the South. And can you hear me? Hear me? All y'all is actually plural. And for you English teachers, all y'alls is plural possessive. Used to, you didn't have to explain all that when you were doing something in Atlanta, but all you Yankees have got moved in here. Tried to take over. I did hear we could have beat all the Yankees with corn stalks, but they wouldn't fight with corn stalks. So, Frank sort of put some pressure on me over there this morning. We were having breakfast. He said, Leo, I heard General Petraeus speak yesterday. What are you going to talk about? What do you do? So, By the way, Diane, it's Albany, Georgia. Did I say Albany? Yeah, afraid so. Oh, you are? Are you from North Georgia? I'm from Valdosta. People above Macon were Yankees when I was growing up. It's much to some of my PR people's chagrin. I sort of decide what I'm going to talk about on the way to wherever I am. I tell you what gave me that title is because we've got about 250, 300,000 investors. And I do seminars around the country about every 2 years where we invite all of them to come at different locations. And one other thing, too. Ken, it was good to see him. We hadn't seen each other in how long? He was 20-something. He was one of the first attorneys that ever helped us do things. He and I got to go to Washington and fight with the SEC back then. And he used to kick me under the table. He said, Leo, don't say that. I said, I'm going to say what I want. Don't let it cost us another $20,000. As he can tell you, I didn't really care. I didn't have the money anyway. So I told him what I thought about him, which I still think that way about him, generally. But as I went around the country giving talks, and we'd have 150, 200 people, wouldn't you say, at most of these meetings we had. And I would ask the question, and I'll ask you this question too, so I'll just see where you are. How many of you do not owe a dime on your car, your house, or credit card? Raise your hand. You're in real trouble. The rest of you are. Because in this case, with these people, 75% do not owe a dime on a house, a car, or a credit card. Not a dime. And that's sort of interesting when you think about it. Because is this recession bothering them? Y'all going to have true or false questions, aren't you? Is this recession... Oh, the 5 of you that raised your hand, is the recession bothering you? Even though you don't have any debt? That's interesting. Do you have labor pains when your wife was pregnant? Today? I had an uncle that was that way. His wife, they had 4 children. Every time his wife would get pregnant, he'd have morning sickness. I said, Gene, she's pregnant. You're not pregnant? I know, but... Now, I do think there's a carryover. When people around you have debt and all these problems, you tend to absorb that in such a way that you feel like you have them. Well, you don't. The rest of the idiots in the room are in debt, not you. So, I kind of like, you know that ice storm you had the other day? I love it when ice storms come up. They are like recessions if you think about it, but they're short term. If you have an ice storm and you can't get to wherever you are getting to, how does that make you feel? Helpless, frustrated. By the way, that's what people feel today. They feel helpless. They feel frustrated because of their financial situation. But here's what happens. And we'll take questions on real estate later because this has nothing to do with real estate. Like I said, I live up by the athletic club. It took me 20 minutes to get here, and a whole new talk came. You know why things frustrate you? You're presumptive. You ever thought of that? You're presumptive. Think about it. We have a personal guarantee on a loan with a bank. Well, who says you're going to be alive? Aren't you being pretty presumptuous? Even the thought of or the action of borrowing money, is that not presumptive? What are you presuming in that case, Ken? Stay alive. Think about it. Stay alive with a job, making $93,462 a year net, and then assuming your wife won't spend too much to buy furniture for whatever you just bought. And isn't that kind of silly? It's presumptive to think that I'm going to catch an airplane every time I plant it down here at Hartford if there's an ice storm. And when we get out, the further we get out in our presumptions, and presumption, by the way, presumption assumes or presumes that you have anything to do with the future. Y'all with me here? Do I get an amen every now and then? And we will pass a collection plate when I'm through. See, that's the real problem. That's the real problem. We are very presumptuous people. Do you think the people in Haiti are doing today what they thought they would be doing 2 weeks ago? Yeah, do this. I'm going to have to make it easy on some of you. Most of you did not graduate from Georgia, I can tell you. You don't even understand my questions. Must be a lot of tech people here. So I'm going to tell you, the Bible has a great... If you'll open your Bibles right quick. Would you read for me James 3? James 4, about 13. What? Nobody? Here's what it says. It's a great verse. You ought to read it a lot. Because when these type things happen, then you won't be upset. It says, what we're going to do. Here's what I'll paraphrase this. What we're going to do is we're going to get up a group of us, and we're going to go off into a foreign country like Alabama. And we're going to buy and trade for about a year. We're going to make a lot of money. And then we're going to come home. Isn't that what we do? We start a job. We're going to work hard. We're going to make a lot of money. And they're going to pay us what they said they were going to pay us. Isn't that a new thought? Now. And they're going to pay us this. And I'm going to go ahead and buy a house and put how much down? 3%. That's the average. 3% down. I really want a real edge on life. And we're gonna do all these things and make money. And you know what God says? He said, your life is like a vapor. And if you look that word up in the Greek, you know, sometimes when the windows in your house have that little moisture on them, that's really what that's talking about. It's just that little bit of moisture on the glass in your house. That's what your life is like. And you are here today and gone tomorrow. So, if you think you're going to go to Alabama and make a lot of money, stay there a year and come back, here's what you better say. How many of you know what it says? Here's what you'd better say. If God wills, we will go to Alabama. Or maybe even venture off as far as Mississippi. This is the Wells version, not the King James. We're going, and then that. Now, do you see how that changes your attitude in your life? If you, in your mind, I'm not saying you have to go utter this all the time, but if in your mind you say, I'm going to go to the airport tomorrow, as long as God is willing. Now then, if it snows and ices your street up, you're not out there trying to hack your way back to civilization. Because obviously what? God's not willing. The rest of you, are you atheists? I mean, Cecil gives me an answer here. If you're atheist, you probably ought to leave right now because this is going to make no sense to you. If God is willing. See, what might be happening is God might be willing for you to stay home with the children that day and Mama. And if you don't have children, just you and Mama. That's always a good program. Maybe you can put the kids out in the snow and lock the doors. But maybe that's what God is willing. But you see what that does to you emotionally, and it if you can't go, you just can't go. I've seen people. We used to have a guy that lived close to us and went with ice. He was from somewhere, Connecticut or something. Who knows? But he had a little slant on his getting out of his driveway. It just embarrassed him to death that he was from Connecticut and couldn't get out of his driveway. And he just burned his tires off. It was funny watching him get out there in the suit to burn his tires out and then go in the house to change clothes. But he didn't understand if God is willing. He was going to do it because he knew how to drive in the ice. Yeah, if you can get out of your driveway. So, now, what does all this have to do with a recession? Well, what's happened to saving rates in this country since this started? Is there something bad about that? Where should they have been anyway? Up. And they're not up because what presumptions have we as a society made? I'm going to get paid more tomorrow. I'm going to get another raise. My house, in fact, I'm already looking at a bigger house. And in fact, have you ever thought about this? Only in America do you buy starter homes. Right? You see it on the sign, starter homes. Like, you would never finish here, just start here. This is not a permanent neighborhood. Isn't it? I mean, really, the word presumption, you ought to burn that in your brain because that is what's got everybody in trouble. Do we have a real estate problem in the United States? Think about it. Let me give you a little piece of information. If everybody in America had paid cash for their house, their office building, their warehouses, whatever it is, cash money, would we have a real estate problem? All right, if we don't have one if it's paid for, we don't have one if it's not paid for. You understand me? You got it right. Tom is right. We have a debt problem. A debt problem. Not a real estate problem, but a debt problem. And where does debt come from? Remember the word I just told you? You're so dumb. I told you just to write it down. I know there got to be more tech graduates in here than Jordan. Our presumptions get us in trouble. So we've got a presumption problem in this country. And guess what? We'll have 5 years from now another presumption problem unless we focus on the right thing. Now, I must tell you, I kind of like this. Now, a lot of you say, hey, you cold-hearted. I mean, even Bob, when he was writing up my thing, he said, now, Leo, make sure you don't say that it's really this is good. We don't want to leave people with the wrong impression. I'm sorry, Bob. I just screwed up your whole thing you wrote for me. I really think it's wonderful. I really do. I think people need to learn. It's better now than later, always. Because at least now, you say, I made the wrong presumptions. And I'm going to change that. Why would we want people to keep doing it wrong and doing it wrong and doing it wrong? And you think this isn't going to happen again? It will happen again. Let me tell you the biggest problem we have right now overall. People want more and more liquidity. Now, the other side of the coin of liquidity is what? Volatility. Y'all with me on that? Volatility and liquidity are the same coin. Because if you have if you've got a lot of liquidity in all your investments, let's say, that means you can change investments overnight. You can get out of the market overnight. You can get out of your real estate overnight. You can get out of anything you're in overnight. And when people can get in and out overnight, what takes over their investment philosophy? Their emotions. Isn't it great to run a country based on emotions? I look around the room. Some of you ladies married on emotion. And just look at the result. You got. See, short-term emotion will keep you in trouble for the rest of your life. But that is where we are in this country. Now, if you didn't let emotions drive everything you do, and all these presumptions, and you know, I almost cry some mornings leaving the gym at the athletic club. I see these young kids come in, 28, 30, 35 years old. They all started, as far as their cars and their houses, they started where their parents finished. Right now, they're dropping out of the athletic club like flies because their jobs aren't paying what they presumed they would be paying. Their club dues didn't go down. How many of you are in a club that the dues have gone down? I was telling somebody at the table, I bought a set of golf clubs last year, but the pro walked by me. He said, Leo, technology has passed you by. You know what? The driver costs more than my other clubs cost. So because these young people, and delightful people, because they presumed they would do better than their parents. In fact, I've heard them in the gyms or in the locker room say, you know, my dad's an idiot. Their old man probably paid their dues and paid their interest fee, but he's an idiot. Of course, what's interesting now in the locker room, their dad is still there. They're not. They can't even pay for their locker, much less their dues. But they had big Mercedes a few years ago, and their houses were bigger a lot of times. Anybody see this same thing? Do y'all see this? Isn't it? It's all over the place, isn't it? But what brings it about? It is the presumption that they're going, that the course of action they have seen in the past is going to continue. Isn't that right? I'll give you a quick illustration. In 1980, let me think. Yeah, let's say 1990, there were 100 Elvis impersonators in the world. 1990. By the year 2000, there were 5,000 Elvis impersonators. And by the year 2005, there were 20,000 Elvis impersonators in the world. Y'all are not writing this down. You will not get anything more important than this. Public television has this on there. Now, if that projection keeps going, by the year 2025, every other person in the world will be an Elvis impersonator. Now, that excites me. But you see how preposterous those presumptions are? But isn't that the way most of us live? And it's absurd. If God wills, is a different issue. By the way, that's just a different mentality. Because most of us think, if I will, I'll just work harder. Well, I can tell you, there's a lot of people who would work harder right now. In fact, I like this environment. How many of you have ever been to Home Depot or Lowe's? Did you just love the service? I became convinced years ago. You know, at Lowe's, they wear these little blue aprons, and at Home Depot, they wear an orange apron. I for years, was convinced that those were teleporters. Because, you know, you see one in the aisle, and you see them got that orange, and you start down there, and before you get there, they disappear. I would go, and I'd look, I'd say, where'd they go down that aisle? No, they're not down. Did they on this aisle? No, they just gone. I always wanted one so I could just, Angie said, my wife would say, honey, would you come here and do it? I just want to disappear. It never worked for me. She could find me anyway. Not now. I read about these new washer dryers. They're super efficient. You put your clothes in to wash them, and really, you don't even have to hook them up to water. You spit in there about every 30 minutes. And they're supposed to clean your clothes and do everything. I don't know if it really works, but I want to give it a shot. We're down at Amelia Island, and I go over to the Lowe's, and And by the time my wife and I I said, honey, I'll just go get them. No, you're not going to get a washer and dryer without me. So she's right there with me. We start back down the aisle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people with blue aprons appear. It's a reverse telesponder or whatever. They're there. I'm thinking, what has happened? What has happened? I'm asking you, what has happened? They want to really keep that job. 6 people. I'm back there looking at a washer and dryer. 6 people. Now, 3 of them are management. Now, I can tell you how I could tell. They had on loafers. You see that? You don't work all day, if you got good sense, on a concrete floor with loafers. So they're back there telling. I said, aren't you 3 in management? The ones of you who know me, I do this all the time. It gets me thrown out of the nicest places. I said, aren't you in management? Now the other 3 said, they said, well, how did you know? Their name tags didn't say, man. How did you know? Well, you got on loafers. You just used to work in the office, aren't you? Well, that is what we used to just work in the office. But now where are they? They're working now. They're on the floor. Trying to make it a great experience for us. I like it. Do y'all like good service? Do you like people waiting on you and taking care of you? We just had a retreat from our office of our what I call direct reports, or what do we call them? I don't even know. That's what the executive committee. There are about 20 of us counting our wives down there. I swore off the RitzCarlton at Lake Oconee 6-7 years ago. It is absolutely. I'm going to caveat this in a moment. It was absolutely the worst service. I am actually a member of what they call the Ebony Club. No, that's not it. Something like that, though. Like some kind of club that they invite you to join because I use RitzCarltons a lot. I told them I wouldn't even go back there. 4 times I've been there, and it was the worst service I've ever, and the worst food. And I give them 3 or 4 times is enough for me to try it. When we went this time, I can't tell you. Actually, somebody in our office made a mistake, and it was going to cost them dearly because I didn't really realize it until about 2 weeks before that's where we were going to be. My wife even said, why are we going back to that RitzCarlton? It's the worst service of any. I've stayed in them. I mean, in the Middle East, in everywhere I've stayed in them, all over the world. It's the worst ever. And I grew up in rural South Georgia. We didn't even have a double-wide trailer. So, I mean, when I say it's bad, it's really bad. They didn't even have a place for the dogs to be up under the trailer plate, We went back. Anyway, and in my brain, I was going to say, whoever made this, I haven't even asked now, but I was going to find out and cut their throat. I mean, you're paying that kind of money. I want a good experience. Folks, I don't know how long this will last, but if you want to go get waited on, you go there now. It almost got bad because you were falling over them. They were trying to help you so much. What's the difference? What's the difference? They value their jobs now. They've learned that service will get people to come. I don't know if y'all like Suburbans. Sometimes I say these things in places like Oregon and Washington, California. They say, Suburban, is that an all-electric car? No, it's not. I like Suburbans. And I heard they were going to quit making them about 2 years ago. So I'm going by this dealership one day. And by the way, we own a Timber REIT. I don't know if y'all know, but timber, trees love carbon dioxide. Carbon monoxide. What comes out of a tree? Carbon dioxide. They love that stuff. I mean, they suck it up and breathe on it all the time. And Mr. Obama may be going to make it so we can just let those trees live and suck up carbon dioxide and get paid for it. Now, don't tell our trees that. They're doing it for free now. But if we get, actually, we're getting paid for it now that I think about it. Isn't that great? People give us money for our trees to breathe. Like if they found out, they'd quit breathing. And the great thing about Suburbans is, I noticed the other day, our house here in Atlanta, excuse me, we got a lot of big pine trees in the front yard, and I noticed they were kind of droopy. Didn't look like they were feeling good. So I just pulled my Suburban up in the front yard and left it running for about 30 minutes. You ought to see those trees. Boy, they just breathe, and you can hear them. I'm like, ooh, this is wonderful. So I like Suburbans. You never know when your trees need a jolt. I go by the dealership, and I see this white Suburban sitting out there. I say, General Motors is in such trouble. I might ought to start. I got 2 or 3 of them. I thought, well, I better get one more. There's a spare. You never know. And I pull in there, and I said, I just want to look at this one. Okay, they showed it to me. Said, you want to make an offer? No. I've done business in Atlanta with Jim Ellis, and I'll probably, if I really want to buy one, I just want to see him and look at him and kick one and just see what it does. He says, well, why don't you just make us an offer? Well, I don't really want one right now. I'm just kind of getting us thinking about a spare. And I already got some, but he said, well, why don't you just make us an offer? I said, well, I don't know. I don't crazy about buying one today. I'm just starting to look. I'm a shopper. He said, here's what we got, though. Now, this is why I never did understand this. He said, you see this box over here? I said, yeah, it's on a little stand, a little box about this big, had a little slot in it, and it had a thing there at the bottom where you could take out a piece of paper and make an offer and put it in the slot. And then they'd take that and get back to you. I said, now, so if I write it on this piece of paper and put it in there, you're going to take it right out and read it while I'm standing right here, aren't you? Well, yeah. I said, somehow, y'all got me confused. Why would you do that? Well, he had a reason, but I never did figure it out. So he kept on. I said, well, I don't even know how much the car costs. He said, $45,000. I said, well, I don't want to pay that. Well, make us an offer. Make me an offer. Now, see why I like these kind of times? Would you ever get that when things were just going crazy and everybody was borrowing every dime they could get to buy a car? Heck no. I said, well, I don't know. He must just make us an offer. He must have said that 20 times to me. I had a cousin of mine there that he was just sort of amused at all of it like I was. I said, okay, $30,000 cash today. We'll take it. I should have said 25. I always like to go low. So I own another Suburban. But you know what? It was fun. I mean, that's better than going there and they go, I got to go see, I got to go see my man. No, well, now he'll do 42.9. Well, 42.9, that ain't even close to 30. It was over 5 minutes. Once I really decided, okay, I'll buy it at the right price, it's over in 5 minutes. What's wrong with that? Do y'all not like that? Well, a lot of you don't because you got so much debt you can't do it. All I'm saying is get yourself in a position where you can enjoy these kind of times because they will be back. This is not, in spite of what the politicians tell you, the Great Depression. Now, I didn't live through the Great Depression. But thank goodness my parents did, or I wouldn't be here. But in my family, I've got a picture of 5 generations of men. 5 generations. My oldest son and I are in that. So I will tell you, if you've ever lived with people who lived through the Depression, you feel like you lived through the Depression. Because every Sunday after church when we would eat together, all you hear about, we didn't have chicken during the Depression. Somebody hit a crow in the yard, and we pieced the crow out over the whole week. Just on, and how terrible. And I mean, in Valdosta, Georgia, snow every year. They walk through barefooted. I mean, it was horrible. I was so glad some of them died, so I didn't have to hear that anymore. I can't tell you. But this ain't the Depression. What's the employment rate in this country? Isn't this interesting? What's the employment rate in this country? It took y'all 4 seconds to come up with it. So what did you have to do? The tech graduates in here. What did you have to do? Subtract 10 from 100. Why didn't you just know 90 like that? Because we focus on the bad, right? How many people in this country own a home? See, this is why you think this is a bad time. You don't know the right answers. About 64% own a home. See, most of you don't own your home. The bank owns your home. That's why you don't know. What's the percentage of people who are current on their mortgage in this country right now today? Current on their mortgage. 90%. 90%. But most people think it's, if you watch TV much, you'll think it's 40 or 50. Basically, MSNBC. But not to be political. Now, any of you been able to travel around the world much? Name me a country that would not be really, really, really happy with 90% employment, 90% current on their mortgage, and 64% own a home. Name me a country that would not be happy in that environment. And here we are acting like we're in the Great Depression. That's insane, people. And you know what else it isn't? It isn't grateful. We're ungrateful people. I mean, can you imagine having to get in a line to get water every day? And that's not unusual, because there are a lot of parts of the world where clean water is not something they've ever had in their whole lives, in 100 years. It's not because of a hurricane or an earthquake. So to me, these kind of times are what make us focus on things other than our presumptive route of life we wanted to take. It makes us look inside maybe a little better. I'm not stupid enough to believe it'll last. But maybe with some of us it will. And then I think we will be better teachers, better parents, maybe better grandparents. Maybe you learn this for your grandchildren. But it's a lesson that's good, I think. Those of us who are not as old as Ken, but my age, but no. You really look back in your life, and your greatest lessons that you remember are the ones that were the hardest at the time. Is that a fair? Some of you old enough to understand that at this point? It really is. And they're the ones that make you better. You know what? They're the ones. When you take people, you can just be around them for 15 minutes and just talk to them at a table, and you can tell they have survived hard times because there's a confidence they have that other people don't have. There's an assurance in their life that somehow they've worked out a relationship, I think, with God and themselves that they would get through. They're not timid, weak, unsure people. By the way, the people you hate to be around. I know people that can't, you get 3 or 4 of them together, they can't decide which movie to go see, and there's 20 at that theater. They spend all night. They don't ever go. People that have been through hard times have survived it. They're decisive people. That's the way you want to be. That's the way you want to end up. Well, I was going to give you another scripture. Y'all probably are overloaded now. But there are a lot of things that say these are the steps you go through to end up with assurance, a person of assurance. The kind of people you may want to work for. Not some nilly-dilly person that can't make a decision. Oh, I don't know what we ought to do. Oh, it's hard. Doesn't that give you a feeling of confidence? It's a lot easier to be with somebody and say, Alan said, look, I've been through this before. It works out. I know the end. Right? You've been through some of these real estate things. A lot of us have. And you know what? It does work out, doesn't it, Alan? Have you ever watched a football game for the second time? Now, you watch it. You like seeing the game. But you're not as nervous. Because you know the end of the story. It's still fun to watch it. But you don't have it. I knew Coach Ricky should have never got that guy. Should have fired that guy last year. I told him Bobo was an idiot. And Martinez ain't got sense enough to put a linebacker in that hole. How does he do that? And then Georgia win or doesn't win. But you don't go through all that, do you? No. And once you've been through it before, like Al and I were just talking, once you've been through it before, and you understand what the end is like, that it does end, that somehow it changes the way you watch the game. Is that a fair statement? You still enjoy it, though, don't you? Well, but you even know, Cecil, if you lose, or your coach leaves. For you Tennessee fans. I just think this is a great time. It's a great time. It really is like a 3-day ice storm when you can't leave the house. You just relax, enjoy it, and learn from it. The next time, if you see on the news that temperature may be something, you might want to come down to Amelia Island with me. We didn't get any ice. And there's an airport. But you get caught in the ice before you learn those things. We used to have them pretty bad, and I live up in North Fulton County. We've been several times for a week without electricity. Well, guess what I did? Before any time we were going to look like have ice, I've had a friend of mine with a generator. I went and borrowed his generator. Then I hook it up, and one time we ran our whole house for a week on a generator. Because I'd done that one time before with a week with no generator. The second time around, I did better. I learned. And this is a learning process. Don't fight it. Don't be ugly about it. Don't cry. Don't have labor pains. It's just a time to enjoy learning and watching other people learn. Does that make sense to anybody? Amen. Hey, I like that. I like amens. I'm going to end there, and I'll take any questions you have.
Please make sure you signal for a microphone since we're webcasting this. If you have a question.
Somebody's got a bottle of water.
I've enjoyed being here today. I appreciate I've really liked what you've talked about. But can you talk more about the new Timberland REIT and I guess if you have any acquisitions in mind or any growth associated with the REIT?
Yeah, the question was about our Timberland REIT. We bought about 3 or 4 years ago 322,000 acres of timberland. About 200,000 of that is in Georgia, right down the Alabama-Georgia line. About 100,000 is in Alabama. It's old Midwest. It's Midwest Vacos timberland that they put together. It took them about 80 years. There's probably 1,000 different tracts in that 322,000 acres. To give you some perspective, if those were football fields, they would go from New York to Los Angeles and halfway back again. Does that help you on size? It's a lot. It's a lot of land. Half the size of Rhode Island, but Rhode Island's kind of little anyway. So, but I really think. Well, historically, timberland has been a great investment. If you want to look at a lot of the pension funds that now you can see their online, you can go online and see a lot of their investments. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, several of those, CalPERS, made more money in the last 25 years on timber than they made on all their other investments. Now, it's not a cash flow vehicle. We have our office REIT basically for that. I think we've been now 22 or 24 quarters with a 6% dividend on that. Excuse me. But it's more, it's a capital gains. In fact, with timber, once you own it 1 year, even all your income on it's capital gains. So it gets some good tax treatment. But I just think long term, we're going to see a lot of money being made in timber. One part of it is actually we are being paid. I better not make too much fun of this. I get coached on what I'm supposed to say. But we're getting paid now. I mean real money. Not to cut some of these trees and just to let them breathe. And if some of this cap and trade comes down, I didn't say I'm for cap and trade, but I like to get prepared for things that even if I don't agree with them, I can make money on them. There's nothing wrong making money on what you don't agree with as long as it's moral. I'm not into cocaine and marijuana and all that yet. But, you know, marijuana, we might could grow it. No, it's a joke. It's a joke. But I just think there's some other offshoots of that. For instance, it's hung up in Congress right now on some definitions, but renewable energy in the South, we don't have enough sun to really do solar panel stuff, and we don't have wind in the magnitude we need to do windmills. In fact, if you really saw the numbers on it, you don't even know how much you are subsidizing windmills and these solar things. They don't generate enough electricity to run that clock up there hardly. I mean, it's like 1 or 2% of all electricity in the United States is created by that, and yet they get most of the money. It's just absurd. But nevertheless, it's your government, you know, if you want to pay it. But in the South, we do have trees. And if we can burn those trees, either by pelletizing them or just dumping those big old boogers in there and burning them, that generates electricity. And I think if they pass some of that, that's going to be really good if you own trees. The problem with trees is, on a BTU basis, they produce half what coal produces. I mean, coal is great stuff. And I know when the president was running and in Pennsylvania, he was going to be for clean coal. How many of you have ever held coal? That's all politics. There's no clean coal. It's dirty. But it burns hot. And so I think there are going to be some real energy plays with trees. Particularly when you can buy the trees today at just what they're worth for fiberboard, that type of stuff. We haul out about 1,200 truckloads a week off these forests. We sell that to Midwest Vaco. They make paper. In fact, they make the cartons. You know, if you go in the grocery store and pick up a carton of Coca-Cola, the paper thing, right? They make all those. And if you look on the bottom there, my picture's there. No. But that's what they make. And that's 1,200 truckloads a week we haul into there. We plant 1 million or 2 million pine trees a year. We on that 322,000 acres, we could haul that off in perpetuity. 1,200 truckloads a week. That's a lot of wood. I need to be able to tell you in tonnage and all that kind of stuff, but you see these big trucks. There's 1,200 a week coming off our land somewhere, going to Midwest Vaco, and that's not even. And we're doing good with that. Not even counting the housing market. We're not selling any timber off of there for houses. If that comes back, I mean, it even gets better. So as a bonus, I think there are going to be some good energy plays in timber. As soon as if any of y'all want to invest in that, give me a check at the door, or cash. We'll take cash. But as soon as we get some of that debt paid down on that, then we'll pay that off, and then we'll start buying more. We'd like to have about 4 or 5 million acres of trees. I think that's it. We also can go into. We're looking at South America, particularly Brazil. If you don't know anything about eucalyptus trees, I think. Maybe not in my lifetime, but in the next 25 or 30 years, I think you'll see all white paper made from eucalyptus trees. Eucalyptus tree has a bark that y'all know what a eucalyptus tree is. You can't raise it anywhere in the United States except Southern California, which is a fascinating story. Y'all seen the eucalyptus trees in California? You know how they got there? They were brought in by the railroad from Australia because they grow so fast. They can grow to 80 feet in South America. In Brazil, they can grow to 80 feet in about 10 years. That's rolling. They brought them to California and planted them everywhere. And they were going to make cross ties out of them for the railroad. The railroads brought them in from Australia. They're indigenous to Australia. So when they started growing and all, then they started cutting them up into the sizes that you need for cross ties. And then when they drove a spike into them, they split. Now, wouldn't you think that somewhere in Australia they would have cut one down and thought, well, they split. They're no good for cross ties. They only planted a few million out there until they figured that out. So that's why you just see them sitting there. They're horrible as far as a tree. They suck up out of the ground enormous amounts of water and put it in the air. And if you know anything about Southern California, their average rainfall is less than 10 inches a year. They have had people propose to cut them all down just to keep the water in the ground is better in California than it is in the air. They don't need it in the air. But, of course, there are also eucalyptus huggers. Now, if y'all understand what I mean. You did hear the fellow that, how long, we've got another hour or two? There's a guy, lunchtime good, we can eat again. There's a guy out in the state of Washington, and he was brought in before this judge for killing an eagle and eating him. So the judge had him in and said, "Sir, why did you do this?" He said, I'd lost my job, and I was just around the house, and and I just saw this eagle sitting on the fence post, and I just threw a rock, and it happened to hit him. I really didn't mean to kill him, but it did. The judge gets feeling sorry for the guy, and finally says, "Okay," he said, "I'm going to let you go." He said, but, I forgot to, and they ate him. That was the other thing. It was just disgusting to the people. He ate an eagle. And so the judge said, "Why?" He said, "My kids were hungry. We were hungry. I've been out of a job. I was a logger. Didn't have any money." He ate him. The judge said, "All right, I'll let you go." The guy gets almost to the back of the courtroom, and the judge says, "I've always been curious. What does an eagle taste like?" He said, "A lot like spotted owl." I will tell you, we did have a person at one of our meetings out in that part of the world that was appalled that we cut down pine trees because, according to this lady, they are all connected under the ground in their root system, and they talk to each other. And when you cut one down, the rest of them around it get depressed. Some people just aren't made to hear me speak. Anyway, next question. Yes, sir.
You spoke about paying off the debt on the Timberland. What is your philosophy in the organization about use of leverage? And you spoke about debt personally.
Yeah. The Bible has he was talking about debt. The Bible has an interesting philosophy of debt, and I would say this is my personal one. The Bible says if you owe a person money, you're their slave. Now, you make that decision. I can't make that for you. If you like slavehood, you gentlemen came from a background like that. Most people want to get out of slavery. Is that a fair statement? For some reason in this country, we got a lot of people wanting to get in it. I'm not sure I can get that, but I think there are times that if you got $500,000 cash in the bank and you want to borrow $100,000, that's probably a good spot. But I personally I don't have any debt personally. We've got now, in this fund, $5 billion of real estate and about 17% debt, 98% leased. But I'd just soon pay all that off. You know how I got a little bit of debt involved in these things? There's some purchases that you buy. In fact, I can tell you the problem is the Nabisco's U.S. headquarters in Los Angeles. When we got ready to buy it, they had about 15% debt with Deutsche Bank at 1.5%, but you couldn't pay it off. And that's the first building I ever bought that I couldn't get the debt off. And I thought, well, that's pretty reasonable debt. And so that sort of, I think there are times I just don't like that slavehood thought. where it's got you, you don't have it. Now, that doesn't mean some people can't use it wisely. But are you familiar with a group they were out of Toronto? They did all the Canary Wharf stuff. What was that group's name? The Reichman brothers. Olympia and York. I would just say, for me personally, I thought the Olympia and York people were the smartest real estate people in the world. I mean, they were brilliant people. At one time they paid about 12% of the taxes paid in Manhattan. If you know where the Twin Towers were, all the rock dug out of the Twin Towers were actually put over in the Hudson River, and then they built that whole financial area right over there. That was all them. But they went bankrupt 10 or 15 years ago. And what did that? Debt on Canary Wharf. So I got to thinking, here are the smartest people. I mean, I came off of rural South Georgia. These guys are smart. I figure if people that smart can't handle debt, and I can tell you, for those of you real estate people, I know every piece of debt you ever did was accretive debt. Right? Theirs was too. They're still bankrupt. Still bankrupt. And so debt terrifies me. I think debt must be like cocaine. Everybody starts off as a recreational user. And pretty soon they've sucked their whole life up their nose. So debt it really does terrify me. But I think the Bible doesn't say you can't do debt. The Bible just puts you in the situation of what you're in when you get debt. So I think if you mentally can accept that and the consequences of that, is that the way most of you would like to live? I mean, there are a lot of people worked a long, hard time to get out of slavery, and to put ourselves in. It's easy to get in it, but hard to get out. Y'all understand that part? So that's my only thing on debt. We do have a thing at the office. I really encourage all our people to get out of debt that work for us, because if you've got an employee that has debt, they're only half your employee. You understand? Because it's here. It's all right there. Half your employee. So I encourage them all to pay off their cars or credit cards. So on the car deal, we got this. You get a sticker. If you pay for your car, you get a sticker, and it's got a little caricature of me, and it says debt-free car or something like that, and they get to put it on their car. Now, the only caveat to that is I tell them I'm going to key all the cars in the parking lot without a sticker. So I hope that helps. Next question. Yes, sir.
What's your general view of financial sponsors, because they live and die on how they create value is through the use of financial leverage based on the principle that debt is cheaper than equity.
Well, I would only question the last sentence you said. I mean, look around this room
today, basically.
Look around the United States right now. Has debt been cheaper than equity? I'm not talking about just the dollar. See, you're drawn to a bottom line. I'm talking about an emotional situation. I'm talking about an environmental situation, humanly speaking. In fact, there are a number of studies now on REITs particularly that show that low leverage REITs make more money than high leverage REITs, even though it was supposedly all accretive at the time. Again, I'm not against debt. I just think people need to understand if you're willing to risk it all. I'm not a gambler, so when I go to Vegas, I just sort of notice. I never see these beautiful people you see on TV. They're all 90 years old pulling the nickel slot machines. I don't know where they get the Vegas you see on television, because these are poor people. Actually, they might not have been poor when they got there, but they are now. But you make that choice. That's a choice a person makes. And if you've got no money, and I deal with Goldman Sachs, I deal with Morgan Stanley, JP, I know them all. They come in with about 6 tranches of debt, and they made a fee on every tranche, and you put no money down. Now, but they do say, this little thing says a personal guarantee. It's just like rolling dice. And I think as long as you understand that, But I know a lot of these guys in New York that don't own anything now, that did, including yachts and airplanes. And that's not. I'm more comfortable. Let me say this, and I know our investors are. When I ask a group of our investors, and 75% have no debt, they really like investing with me because we have very, very little debt. Right now, 6% dividend for 24 quarters. If we had debt, that couldn't happen. And the volatility, by the way, is what terrifies the average investor. They don't like this stuff. Even if it comes out the same average, they just don't like it. It's like their pacemaker. You know, I heard a guy say one time, said the only thing he noticed about when he had a pacemaker put in is when he got a little amorous around the house, his garage door would go up and down. So, but I hope. I got a lot of good friends that are mortgage bankers, and I mean, we're taking something. Anyway. No, I didn't know that. Thank y'all very much for putting up with this.
We want to thank you, Leo. I know I personally take away that I need to work on my presumptions and my visa balance. So I appreciate your comments. And I want to present to you a sculpture from a local artist, Loretta Ebby. So something.
Well, thank you very much.
Office. And again, thank you for being.
Oh, excuse me.
They told me to be careful when I picked it up, so that was really good.
Thank you very much.
And guys, the magic words to get out of the garage are Cherry Third Thursday. Thanks, and we'll see you next month.